You know, every business has its own way of working. Some follow routines that are pretty common across the industry, while others have their own special way of doing things. And that's totally normal because no two companies operate the same way. What's really helpful is when your planning system can adjust to both types. That's where IVP makes a real difference. It doesn't force you into one fixed process. Instead, it gives you the flexibility to handle both the usual day to day planning process and those unique situations that are specific to your organization. Now, this flexibility isn't just on the surface, it goes right down into the core planning logic. And to really understand how powerful that is, let's walk through some examples and scenarios. Let's start by talking about the planning needs that are not typical, those unique ones. These vary a lot depending on the nature of the company. For example, some companies focus heavily on their product. That's their biggest strength. Maybe their product is top notch in terms of design or quality. But other companies might be more service oriented. They focus on how well they can deliver, respond, and support the customer. So, depending on what's most important to the company, product or service, the way planning is done also changes. That's why IBP is built to be highly adjustable. The internal setup in IBP can be tailored so that it works well in no matter what kind of business model you are following. That said, some planning practices are used almost everywhere. Forecasting is a good example. Lots of companies use simple methods like taking the average sales from recent months to guess the future demand. For instance, they might look at sales over the last 3 or 6 months and use that trend to create a forecast. It's quick and practical and it works for many. But not every company finds that useful. Some need forecasting methods that are more custom built to fit how their business works. This is where we talk about standard versus custom processes. Some companies stick to the textbook way and others do things in a way that's unique to them. There's another big area where businesses can differ how they produce their products. You might have heard the terms like M2, MTO, and MTS. If not, don't worry. I will walk you through it. MTO stands for make to order. MTS stands for make to stock. These are just two different strategies companies use to manage production and inventory. Let me make this simple with an example. Picture yourself at a cafe. They might have a few sandwiches already made up and kept in display. These are ready to go. Anyone can buy them. That's make to stock. They were prepared ahead of time because the cafe knows people will come and would want one. Now imagine you walk in and say, I want a sandwich with no onions, double cheese, and spicy sauce. That's something they wouldn't have pre made. They will make it for you fresh once you order it. That's make to order. So, in business terms, MTO products are only made after a customer places an order, usually because these products are unique, highly specific. MTS products, on the other hand, are made in advance and kept in stock because the company knows they will sell. For MTO products, companies don't usually keep finished stock. Why would they? These are special items, not mass produced. But they do not need to keep enough raw materials on hand. And here's where it gets tricky. They also need reliable suppliers. If you have only got one supplier and they can't deliver on time, you are stuck. You might lose the order because you can't make the product. That's why companies with MTO products often maintain several suppliers for the same materials. Now, for MTS products, things are more predictable. The company knows that these items are in regular demand. They know that if one customer doesn't buy, someone else probably will. So it's safer to produce in advance and keep in inventory. Think of a grocery store. They always stock items like flour, cooking oil, or sugar. Those products don't sit for long. Someone is always going to buy them. And here's the thing, most companies actually use both strategies. For items that are custom built or sold in small volumes, they will use MTO. For high demand and standard items, they will go with MTS. So, in reality, companies are juggling both approaches at the same time. In IBP, this matters because your system setup, the master data, the planning settings, and the replenishment logic all depend which strategy you are using. The system handles them differently. For MTO, planning kicks in only when there's an order. For MTS, planning is based on forecast demand. So you need to configure the system correctly, and IBP lets you do that. Still with me? All right. Let's move to another key idea: how unpredictable things can get in a supply chain. Every company deals with its own kind of challenges. Even companies in the same industry can have totally different problem and workflows. Take demand planning for example. One company might have steady, stable demand. Another might deal with wild swings. Demand in one month could be twice as much as the next. So the process they need can't be one size fits all. That's why IBP includes features that allow you to model different scenarios and make changes easily. Um, the goal is to stay flexible because in supply chain you never really know when something will go wrong. A sudden order, a supplier delay, a weather issue, anything can shake things up. So your planning system has to be able to handle change quickly. IBP does this through its flexible design. You can configure different data models, use custom attributes, and set up key figures and calculations that match your business. And when it comes to forecasting, there are different algorithms to choose from. Here's a practical example. If you are forecasting for an MTS product, IBP might use a smoothing technique. This involves looking at past sales data, identifying the pattern, and filtering out the extremes. Now, what do I mean by extremes? Let's say you usually sell around 10,000 units of a product every month, but in one month you only sold 1,000 units. That's a red flag. Something unusual has happened. That's an outlier. Or if on in another month sales jump to 20,000, that's an outlier too. It's not the normal trend. These unusual spikes or drops can mess up your forecast. So if you are not careful, so IBP can automatically detect and remove those outliers before calculating the forecast. This gives you a much cleaner, more reliable prediction of future demand. All right, are you with me so far? This far, we have covered unique planning needs. Now let's switch gears and talk about the common stuff, the kind of planning almost every company does. This is what we call processes. These include practices like having a single aligned forecast across departments. That means your sales team, operations team, and finance team all are using the same numbers. No more confusion or mismatched reports. Other examples include balancing supply and demand, scheduling operations so you meet customer delivery dates, and setting up inventory plans that support service goals.